Thank you to War Thunder for sponsoring today's video. In a galaxy drowning in endless war, few creatures are as suited to the setting as orcs. Loud, brutal, and strangely cunning, the orcs live only for a good fight, and so the most famous of them end up being the toughest, meanest, and of course, biggest members of their race. Usually anyway. From prophets and pirates to mad docs and mech boys, these are the orcs who changed the course of history. Among the countless warlords of the galaxy, few orcs are as strange or as dangerous as Ghazghkull uruk thraka, a true prophet of the Wa. Ghazghkull is a living throwback to the great prime orcs of ancient legend, and he is still on the rise. Not since the time of the Great Crusade has an orc been so possessed of vision and tactical ability, and in true orky fashion, it all began with a bolter round to the head. A runty boy at the time, Ghazghkull was dragged half dead before the infamous mad doc grotsnik. He got an adamantium plate bolted into his skull, and when it didn't work, he was dumped in a heap out back. When he woke up, he wasn't just alive, he was different. He started hearing voices, maybe Gork and Mork themselves, and for the first time, a modern orc didn't just want to fight, he knew why. From that day, Ghazghkull rose like no orc before him, killing his way up the ladder, growing larger and making plans all the while. Twice he has hurled his Wa against the fortress planet of Armageddon. He's captured Uruk, survived every Black Templar crusade sent to kill him, and even after the famous Space Wolf Lord Ragnar Blackmane killed him, Ghazghkull still came back by having his head stitched onto a monstrous new body made of parts from over 20 other orcs. The frightening part of this is that we're unsure if that's a special thing Ghazghkull can do, or if every orc can survive that sort of damage. Regardless, he's still somehow roaming the galaxy, leading the Great Wa towards Ragnarok, the final battle that will never end. And he's not alone, because at his side is Makari, the so-called Lucky Grot. Makari isn't just a mascot or a standard bearer, he's something much stranger. Over and over again, Makari has died. Trampled, shot, sat on, only to return, sometimes as a newly hatched grot, sometimes in a fully grown body, always with his memories intact. Each time he finds his way back to Ghazghkull, carrying the same mad devotion and sharing the same prophetic visions. Some orcs whisper that Makari is the will of Gork and Mork made flesh, a living reminder to Ghazghkull to stay true to the god's grand design. He has saved his boss's life more than once, including the time he crawled through the barrel of a Lehman Russ tank to kill the crew from inside. 2 survivors, 2 omens, 2 walking miracles, and the biggest Wa the modern galaxy has ever seen. Before the Imperium ruled the stars, the Orcs already ruled the void between them. One of the first and greatest threats the Emperor faced after uniting Terra wasn't a lost Primarch or a rebellious human empire. It was an orc warlord so powerful he almost killed the godlike master of mankind. Uruk, the beast of Ullanor, was no ordinary warboss. His Wa had carved out an empire spanning dozens of systems, a brutal green tide strong enough to halt the newborn Imperium's expansion. If Uruk wasn't stopped, the dream of mankind's galactic dominion might have died before it ever began. The Emperor didn't take the threat lightly. He led the assault personally, bringing with him Horus Lupercal, Rabute Gilliman, Jagatai Khan, and the might of their legions. It was the largest single imperial campaign since the Unification Wars. A surgical strike broke through Urlok's outer defenses. Horus and his Luna Wolves Terminators smashed their way to the heart of the Orc stronghold, battling through hordes of knobs the size of dreadnoughts. In the final confrontation, Horus and the Emperor together faced Urlok, and it nearly wasn't enough. The beast fought with such fury that the Emperor himself was almost struck down, only saved when Horus intervened, severing Urlok's arms and hurling the massive orc from the heights of his fortress. In the bloody aftermath, Horus was the last of the Luna Wolves Terminators still standing, and for his courage, he was named the first War Master of the Imperium. The scale of Urlok's Wa was so vast that even his ordinary boys stood 3 meters tall, their size and strength dwarfing anything humanity had ever seen. It was a warning of the terror that orcs could become, a warning that the galaxy would forget at its own peril. And yet, as mighty as Uruk was, he was only a shadow compared to what would come next. You ever wonder what it would actually feel like to command one of those massive tanks or aircraft we talk about? Not in theory, but for real. Because in War Thunder, that's exactly what you get. War Thunder is the most comprehensive vehicle combat game ever made, and the best part is it's completely free to play on PC, consoles, and mobile devices. You'll have access to over 2,500 tanks, planes, helicopters, and ships across 10 major nations. That includes everything from biplanes and armored cars of the 1920s, all the way up to today's fighter jets and main battle tanks. What really makes War Thunder stand out is just how true to life it feels. The attention to detail is unreal. You'll recognize actual vehicles pulled straight from history. Every bolt, every armor plate, every sound of a shell hitting the ground is modeled from real-world data. If you've ever wanted to feel what a Tiger tank or a Spitfire actually handled like, this is your chance. You can join over 95 million players around the world in immersive PvP battles across land, sea, and air. With such a huge variety of high-quality content to explore, there really isn't another game better suited for fans of military history. For those of you on PC and consoles who are brand new to War Thunder, or even returning players who haven't played in the last 6 months, you can sign up through the links in the pinned comment or video description to claim a massive bonus pack. This includes the exclusive Eagle of Valor vehicle decorator, 100,000 silver lions, 7 days of premium account, and multiple premium vehicles. Make sure to act fast and click those links below to secure your rewards. In the 32nd millennium, long after Uruk was slain and the Great Crusade had been largely forgotten in the aftermath of the Horus Heresy, the Orcs returned with a vengeance. But this wasn't a horde, it was a tide. Coordinated, terrifyingly advanced, and impossibly vast, a warlord had united nearly every orc in the galaxy, something no other boss has managed before or since. And at the center of it all was a single towering figure, 10 meters tall, masked and armored, speaking perfect Gothic, who simply called himself the Beast. Except, he wasn't alone. The Imperium soon realized there wasn't one beast, but 6, a conclave of so-called prime orcs, each a living engine of war, each ruling their own orcish empire, and towering above them all was the Beast of Beasts. The largest and most cunning of them, a warlord whose strategies shattered imperial sectors and brought the already weakened human empire to its knees. When an attack moon, a planet-sized fortress powered by gravity weaponry, appeared above Terra itself, the High Lords panicked. It was Vulcan, Primarch of the Salamanders, who led the first counterattack. At Ullanor, he confronted one of the beasts in battle and was stunned when the Xenos mocked him in fluent Imperial High Gothic. The two titans fought atop a field of warp-charged generators, and Vulcan won. Barely. For a moment, the galaxy dared to hope, but the beast wasn't done. When the attack moon reactivated over Terra, the newly appointed Lord Commander Courland, last surviving original member of the Imperial Fists, led another desperate assault. Using a ritual guided by a Sister of Silence, they managed to kill the second beast, but a third rose almost immediately. Courland died in that final stand, and with him, the last warrior in a line that stretched back to the Legion's formation. The Imperial Fists would eventually be rebuilt with warriors from their successor chapters. But with that discovery of a third beast, and the possibility of even more, the High Lords authorized a final push. Another ritual was prepared, this time enacted on a planetary scale, and the surviving beasts and their armies were obliterated. To cover the losses suffered by so many Imperial forces and hide the truth of the many beasts, the Imperium propped up a lesser orc to serve as a public victory. But the damage was done. The beast's Wa left whole sectors burning, and his orcs were so powerful that Imperial Fists and Traitor Iron Warriors were forced to fight side by side just to survive. And even in death, his shadow lingers. When the beast finally fell, Eldred Ulthron, greatest seer of the Eldari, warned his people that beasts don't die. They are only banished for a time. And in Ghazghkull meg Uruk thraka, maybe the galaxy is hearing the first distant warnings of that return. Originally a member of the Blood Axes clan, Gorgutz gained notoriety during the conflict of Lorne V. Uniting the squabbling orc clans there, he raised an army big enough to launch his first Wa, and in true orc fashion immediately made a name of himself by teaming up with chaos forces, including a World Eaters champion named Lord Krull. When Krull inevitably tried to betray him, Gorgutz proved why you don't double-cross an orc boss by ripping off Krull's head and mounting it on his boss pole. It became Gorgutz's gruesome trademark, and from that day forward, he was known as the headhunter. Although the combined forces of the Imperial Guard and the Eldari eventually forced him to retreat from Lorne 5, Gorgutz wasn't finished. He regrouped, led another war in the Cronus system, and after another setback, finally struck real gold on Korova II. Switching his allegiance to the speed-obsessed Evil Sons, Gorgutz crushed the defenders, conquered the entire system, and set himself up as the undisputed ruler, using it as a launchpad for even greater campaigns. Gorgutz's ambition didn't stop there. On the doomed world of Acheron, he even made an unlikely alliance with an Eldari craft world and the Blood Ravens Space Marines. Together, they defeated the demonic horde threatening the sector, and when the smoke cleared, Gorgutz claimed his prize, the legendary Spear of Cain. When it comes to orc medicine, pain is guaranteed. Survival, less so. And standing at the top of this mad, blood-soaked field is none other than Mad Doc Grotsnik. A pain boy turned living nightmare, Grotsnik is infamous even by orc standards. He first rose to prominence after saving Ghazghkull Thraka's life, or at least what passed for saving it by bolting an adamantium plate onto the young orc's shattered skull. That crude operation didn't just keep Ghazghkull breathing, it set him on the path to becoming a living legend, and Grotsnik was dragged along for the ride. Flush with fame, Grotsnik decided to improve other orcs the same way he'd fixed Ghazghkull, except he added a little bonus. Each of his patients got an explosive squig implanted in their skulls, ready to detonate if they got uppity. It worked perfectly until it didn't. When the other orcs caught on, they ambushed Grotsnik and cracked his skull open. But even death wasn't enough to keep him down. His loyal Gretchen assistants, including, it's whispered, a very young Makari, dragged his ruined body back to the workshop and spent a full night rebuilding him from scrap and stubbornness. Grotsnik came back, even worse. His first act upon revival, blowing up every single orc who still had one of his bombs rattling around in their heads, cackling like a lunatic the whole time. And after that, there was no going back. He turned his surgical talents toward new heights of orky madness, grafting spare parts onto whoever or whatever he could catch. Himself, Ghazghkull, random boys, it didn't matter. There's also a rumor that Grotsnik and his so-called corpse ludas have been trying to create super-engineered orcs from the best bits of everyone they kill. So far, no proofs ever surfaced, but with Grotsnik, you never really know. Orcs are dangerous enough with fists, choppas, and shootas, but some of them are dangerous in ways even they don't understand. Every orc has a spark of psychic power. Most never tap into it. Some explode the first time they try, but a rare few, the weird boys, can actually wield it. Barely. They absorb the psychic energy orcs naturally generate in battle, growing more powerful the more boys are nearby. But if they overdo it, they risk exploding in spectacular fashion, taking everyone in close proximity with them. And among weird boys, there's one name whispered with both awe and fear: Old Zogwort. Born in a nest of blood vipers and earning his place by biting them back, Zogwort showed early on he wasn't like other feral orcs in his tribe. As he grew, his powers manifested in strange and terrible ways. He learned to transform living things into squigs, twisting snakes into slithering monstrosities he kept as pets. His strength only grew from there. It's said he once obliterated an entire Imperial Guard company with a single psychic blast, losing an eye in the process, but not much else. Eventually, Zogwort grew too powerful and too ambitious to stay on his homeworld. He launched a rampage across the stars known as the Weird Wa, culminating in the destruction of the planet Morogrim and its entire star system. Where most weird boys blow themselves up before they get too far, Zogwort proved what a weird boy could become if he survived long enough to master his power, and the galaxy has never been the same since. The Commandos are the sneaky, silent killers of Orc society. Outcasts among their own kind, they've mastered the art of stealth, learning to blend into their surroundings and strike when their enemies least expect it. And none are more feared than Boss Snickrot. Once a lieutenant under Warboss Kilskar, Snickrot made a name for himself ambushing Catachan jungle fighters on the planet Dulmalin, even dueling the legendary Colonel Ironhand Stratkin. Snickrot lost that fight, barely, and was left for dead, but orcs are very hard to kill, and Snickrot was harder than most. He survived and he reappeared on Armageddon. There he watched his tribe get butchered by Imperial Orc hunters. Furious, Snickrot disappeared into the steaming jungles and turned them into a nightmare. Leading the brutal Red Skull commandos, Snickrot waged a guerrilla war of terror. Ambushes, traps, sudden massacres, and worse. His trademark became scalping victims, leaving behind brutal warnings that drove fear deep into the hearts of even seasoned soldiers. Over half a century later, at the dawn of the Third War for Armageddon, Snickrot was still out there. The green ghosts of the jungle, and even the hardened orc hunters of Armageddon, speak his name in fear. Captain Badrukk isn't just the most infamous pirate in the galaxy, he's the gold-toothed terror of the void. Once a member of the wealthy Badmoon's clan, Badrukk struck out on his own, building a pirate empire from blood, loot, and sheer audacity. He doesn't answer to any war boss, he fights for the highest bidder, and if no one's hiring, he helps himself to whatever looks valuable. Badrukk's reputation is legendary even by freebooter standards. Freebooters are outcasts, orcs who've abandoned their clans to live as mercenaries and pirates. Flashy, unpredictable, and armed to the teeth. They are known across the stars for fighting anyone, anywhere, if the loot is good enough. But even among them, Badrukk is something special. He's claimed kills that sound more like myths, slaying a void whale, raiding a Tyranid hive fleet, and looting Imperial war zones under the nose of entire battle fleets. His monstrous warship, the kill cruiser, the Blacktooth, is infamous, prowling the void with its cannons ready and its boarding parties eager. Lately, he's become renowned for his bold teleporter strikes, zapping his Flash Git boys into perfect positions to inflict massive damage before porting them back out once they've stripped all the nearby loot, and the looting has been good. Badrukk's boys are the best armed, flashiest Gits in the galaxy, with the captain himself wearing impressive hats, gold brocade, and using the most exotic weapons he can buy. Some orc bosses hire him, some try to kill him, most just get out of his way, because when you see the Blacktooth flying overhead, it means Captain Badrukk's already picked out what he's taking, and you're way too late to stop him. Boss Zagstruck is a living missile with an attitude problem, and his own plane called the Vulture. Leader of the infamous Vulture Squad, Zagstruck commands the Storm Boys, a rare breed of orc obsessed with discipline, tactics, and strapping unstable rockets to their backs. Where most orcs charge headfirst, the Storm Boys launch themselves from the skies like living artillery, slamming into enemy lines with brutal precision. And Zagstruck demands nothing less than perfection. Short-tempered and merciless, even by orc standards, he has no patience for failure. Any Storm Boy who doesn't follow orders to the letter gets a personal lesson from the boss, usually involving a few broken bones and some free dental work. Zagstruck himself is even more terrifying. After a brutal brawl with a Space Marine dreadnought, he lost his legs and was rebuilt with the Vulture claws, a pair of vicious bionic legs tipped with sharpened talons. Now, when Zagstruck hits the ground, he doesn't just land, he tears through anything unlucky enough to be underneath him. This, of course, also means that he has named 3 things Vulture: his personal fight-a-bomber, his personal squad of well-trained boys, and his bionic legs. You can't say that orcs don't appreciate a good theme. Orkimedes is a ghost, a myth whispered by terrified tech priests and cursing generals alike. He's never been caught, he's never even been properly seen, but wherever orc technology grows more unstable, more deadly, and more impossible, Orkimedes is usually behind it. Among orcs, mechaniacs or mech boys aren't just engineers, they're half-mad prophets who twist the strange psychic belief of their race into brutal reality. Tanks made from scrap metal, guns that shouldn't fire but somehow do, that is the mech boy way. But Orkimedes is something more. A master mech of terrifying genius, he's been credited with inventing the teleporter, the teleportation device that allows orcs to fling armies directly into the heart of battle. During the Third War for Armageddon, Imperial commanders watched in horror as orc machinery evolved on the battlefield, adapting faster than they could destroy it. The cause? Orkimedes. His weapons have wrecked battle lines, broken sieges, and turned victory into disaster more times than the Imperium cares to count. Entire kill teams have been dispatched to find him, and none have ever returned. It's no wonder that he's the personal mech boy of Ghazghkull. Only the best for the profit of the Wa. Most of the names on our list thus far have been heard across the galaxy, but that doesn't mean there aren't more infamous and strange orcs who deserve attention. Here are our honorable mentions: the lads that may not be as big as Ghazghkull and the Beast, but are just too orky to leave out. Mozrog Skragbad doesn't lead from the back, he leads from the top, specifically the top of a monstrous great white squig known as Big Champa. A beast wrangler, brawler, and rising beast snagga icon, Skragbad is built like a truck and is twice as mean. He's covered in crude bionics from the waist down, a necessary upgrade after being swallowed whole by a gut maw on Yerwin 2. Most orcs would have been digested. Skragbad just tore his way back out. Now he rampages across battlefields with Big Champa snapping tanks in half beneath him, always looking for bigger prey and bigger wars. To Skragbad, anything that bleeds is something worth hunting. Moving on to a rider of a different kind, Ghazghkull Gutsmek is the fastest, loudest, and deadliest biker the Orcs have ever produced. A high-octane legend on 2 wheels. Once a speed freak mech boy, Ghazghkull got tired of fixing bikes for other Orcs and decided to build the biggest, noisiest, deadliest bike in the galaxy. The bike of the Apocalypse. Now, he never stops. Fueled by chems, rage, and raw horsepower, Ghazghkull tears across planets and through void spaces alike, because yes, his bike can fly in space, somehow. And he's not just fast, he's lethal. It's said he once took down a warlord titan by ramping off a cliff and driving straight through its eye lenses, emerging out the back with the princeps head strapped to his handlebars. To Ghazghkull, there's no such thing as too fast. A revolutionary legend whispered among Gretchen across the galaxy, the Red Gobo is the red-coated, squig-riding icon of rebellion against their orc overlords. Sometimes he's spotted throwing explosives, sometimes he's leading uprisings in Gorkamorka, sometimes he's mysteriously shot before the holidays. But no matter how many times he's squished, stomped, or re-educated, the Red Gobo always returns, in new form, with new fury. He's not just a grot, he's a movement. He's many grots acting as a symbol, one tiny middle finger to orky oppression. Zodgrog Wartsnaga is another grot sympathizer, though he'd never call it that. A runt herd with radical ideas, Zodgrog doesn't treat grots like cannon fodder, he treats them like potential. After killing a mech boy who tried to fire one of his snotlings out of a gun, Zodgrog was banished for being too soft. So he went rogue and started creating super runts. Bigger, meaner, nastier Gretchen trained and bred for war. He's back in the orc scene now, claiming his runts can take on space marines, and honestly, he might be right. History has shown rare cases throughout itself where orcs have been shown to work with other species. One of the most recent and perhaps the most well-known cases of it is that of Biter. Better known as Bite's face of the face biter before it can bite, is an orc of the Blood Axes who has the uncanny ability to speak High Gothic perfectly. Blood Axes are often willing to act as mercenaries for the highest bidder, which includes the Inquisition, where Biter acts as a translator. Biter's use for the Inquisition is incredible, although it comes at a high cost, as he and his mob require the price of entire worlds ripe for looting in return for their various services. In return, however, Biter and his crew have even captured Makari for the Inquisition on one occasion. Orcs are the other side of the coin from the Space Marines. Both factions represent the unique flavor of the 40k setting in ways that don't seem like they should mix, but absolutely do. Every one of these orc heroes are silly and strange and delightfully cartoonish, but they're also not out of place when directly opposing the grimdark heroism of the Astartes. There's definitely more we could say about these green maniacs, so make sure to tell us in the comments, what would you like to see? Is it more in-depth discussion on one of these orc standouts, or maybe just talking about how the race has changed from the time of the Great Crusade? And thanks again to War Thunder for sponsoring this video. Don't forget, new and returning players that haven't played in the last 6 months on PC and consoles can use my links to grab a huge bonus pack, including premium vehicles, the exclusive Eagle of Valor Decorator, 100,000 Silver Lions, and 7 days of premium account time. And of course, don't forget to subscribe, or we'll have one of our weird boys directly implant your squishy, hoomy brains with more lore.